Well, hello. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to today's webinar, sponsored by DHL and brought to you by WebAttract. I'm Lori Dearman, Executive Webinar Producer at WebAttract, and in a few moments, I'll be introducing our hosts for today's webinar, who will be sharing insights into how to delight e-commerce customers with a fast, flexible supply chain. Now, you are joined today by over 1,100 professionals across 64 countries, representing a variety of industries and job functions. Regardless of your industry or your location, we're confident that you'll find today's webinar of value. Now, our experts today, Mercado Libre SVP and Supply Chain COO, Ariel Schwarstein, and DHL Supply Chain Head of E-commerce, Nabil Mulali, will discuss how Mercado Libre facilitates a customer-centric e-commerce experience that outpaces expectations, tips for handling critical activities such as peak season planning, returns management, and forecasting, as well as benefits and challenges of e-commerce supply chain outsourcing. So at this point in the program, I would like to pass the floor over to our moderator, Nabil. So over to you, Nabil.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. We are live from Sao Paulo at the headquarters of Mercado Libre called Melicidade. Sorry for my accent. My Portuguese accent is not perfect, but working on that. Thank you so much, Ariel, for joining us.
Thank you, Nabil.
It's great. We're looking forward to a great conversation for the next 45 minutes. It's going to be live, so you guys can ask questions. Please just jump in. We're going to try to have as many of the questions addressed. We have obviously a few topics that we want to touch on, but take advantage of this opportunity also to ask us whatever you want. We're going to try to answer as many as we can. So before we go into the question and the key topics,
sure.
Ariel, could you give us a bit of a perspective on the last 20 years of Mercado Libre, the amazing story of the organization, and also on you and your experience and your background?
Happy to do so. So thanks again for hosting me here. So Mercado Libre started in 1999 in the city of Buenos Aires. We were literally operating out of a garage in a building there. So four entrepreneurs, one of which is our current CEO, Marcos Galperin, started the company as a Mercado Libre site in order to do, internet auctions to democratize trade in Latin America. Think of the eBay of Latin America at that time. So while we started with internet auctions, we quickly pivoted into fixed price, new goods, B2C from professional sellers, and we scaled in order to become probably the biggest e-commerce player in the region by bringing supply and demand together in order to meet in our marketplace. Quickly, a few years after that, we realized that our next bottleneck in order to scale e-commerce operations in Latin America was payments. So we created Mercado Pago in order to be able to process online payments in our platform, and that brought us to a new level of volume and scale. Several years after that, we actually identified the next bottleneck for e-commerce to continue scaling in Latin America. That was logistics. So we created Mercado Envíos in order to solve the problem of making products get from the seller doorstep to the buyer doorstep. So over the last 20 years, this has been an amazing ride. We are operating today in 18 countries: Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Peru, Uruguay, and several others. And if you look at the numbers, in terms of page views, today Mercado Libre is consistently #1 e-commerce player in each of those countries where we are operating. We started super small 20 years ago, but we have now 9,000 people working for us, 11 million sellers selling through our platform, and something like 42 million people buying every year in Mercado Libre. So proud of that. Quickly about myself. So I'm Argentinian, a proud father of 2 daughters. I started my career in management consulting, so I worked several years helping multinational companies across Latin America in building and redesigning their strategies. I moved into the digital world something like 6 or 7 years back. Initially, I was leading a business unit within an online travel agency in Latin America. And something like 3 years ago, I moved to what I think of as the best player to work for in Latin America, which is Mercado Libre. So here I am leading the logistics operations and supply chain for the company.
Great. Thank you very much. So I think there are a few things that you mentioned there, Mercado Pago, the Mercado Envío aspect. So we're going to touch on certainly on these topics as we go through. So before we go into the Q&A, one thing that we like to do is we're going to get a poll going with the team here and the audience. There is a lot of conversation around selling on marketplaces, selling directly to consumer. So we see a huge opportunity with all the advantages and competitive advantage that the marketplace brings to companies to actually sell online. So we wanted to get a feel from the audience on this aspect. So you can vote. So if you're attending, please just jump on the vote and give us your opinion. But we would like to know, what do you think are the main competitive advantage for companies to actually sell on marketplaces? Is it the geographical reach, a large consumer base, obviously payment and financial solutions like Mercado Pago, technology, or logistical and operational support? So please go ahead and vote. That's going to be great to kick us off here. And in the meantime, Ariel, maybe what do you think is the main element? I mean, obviously there's a bit of everything.
I wouldn't be in this place of the audience in having to choose one, but it's probably a combination of technology with reach. I think we can be efficient in terms of bringing traffic into our site through robust and sophisticated performance marketing practices. I think we have a unique technology that makes the process of buying in Mercado Libre super seamless, and probably the combination of the two is what make our marketplace quite unique.
Fantastic. So let's see if we can get the results here from the audience to see what did they respond. Well, I think the reach definitely came as number one, and surprisingly, technology came on number 4. But yeah, logistic and operational support also coming. So definitely reach, logistics and operational support, technology and payment. We might see actually that trend also moving through the time. So yeah. I think very, very interesting. Fantastic. So let us get going here on some of the key aspects. So we see different models of business. We see companies that take a certain path on the way they develop their strategy. Mercado Libre has a really unique strategy when it comes to logistics and the way you guys are managing the growth. So can you share with us a bit on how and what is unique at Mercado Libre in regards to how you manage the growth and how you build this balance between in-source business and outsource business? So share with us a bit about that.
Yeah, so interesting question. So let me step back. And as a company in general, I think our most unique and differentiated attribute is the team. I think we've built a tremendous team with deep, regional knowledge combined with a unique or different mentality of solving complex problems through technology, and that has been instrumental in our story, I believe. And if you combine that with a super robust, ability to execute and resilience, I think that's one of the factors that is explaining how we got to where we are. In terms of supply chain, and going straight to your question, I think we built, as I was saying before, Mercado Envíos in order to solve what was the bottleneck of e-commerce at the time, which is making the products get from seller to buyer. And we aim at providing a fast, reliable, and economic solution for our buyers and sellers as well. Initially, we were signing commercial agreements with carriers, and we were providing shipping labels to our sellers for them to print and hand over their boxes to those carriers. I think that scaled at the beginning, but as time went by, we realized that we need to put our hands into the process and start participating more actively in the value chain, particularly to continue debottlenecking some of the key steps that were kind of capping our growth, and also in making sure that the different parts and actors of that value chain were working coordinately in order to provide the best solutions for our users. Today, the way we see it is, in a sense, we are an asset-light technology company that brings technology in order to make sure that the different actors and protagonists of the value chain, logistic 3PLs, carriers, users, sellers, etc., can work coordinated, in order to make things work for this complex ecosystem to work as a strong machine. And in a sense, we think of ourselves as the technology brain of this complex ecosystem. In that context, we have taken steps into owning or operating parts of that value chain where we thought it made sense, but in a sense, we continue to think of ourselves as the technology enabler for the different parts to be working together.
Great. I like the technology brain of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good way probably to look at it when you think about the complexity and the number of stakeholders you have
Sure.
to actually to deliver that experience.
And that's our differentiator. It's not that we have a super strong track record in executing logistics. Most of our team is new. Some people know a lot about logistics, some other don't, but we like to put technology at the service of solving complex problems. As we do as a company in general, we do the same with Mercado Envíos.
Fantastic. So let me jump on this one. So you announced 3 new DCs in the last 12 months of large scale in very different environment, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, with also different models, some that are managed directly by yourself and some that are with partners. Tell us a bit about the benefits and the challenges maybe in operating in different landscape like this, and how do you come into this decision of doing it directly yourself or looking for a partner that might be already in a situation of strength?
So I think 2 things. On the one hand, there's not such a thing as Latin America as one place. Latin America is a combination of very different countries with different, rules, schemes, labor realities, competitive environment, etc. So we cannot think of one model to fit every country in the same way. In choosing how we combine operations between operating ourselves or outsourcing, we think that we need to put the user in the front line and do what is best for our buyers and for our sellers. And in that regards, we think that combining both our self-operated dynamics with our outsourced 3PL partners bring us to the best place as we can make sure that both models retrofeed, challenge each other, share learnings, and combine in terms of designing our operations for the next stages. So we are constantly, and you guys work with us and you know this by heart already, we are constantly learning from each other, combining what we find in one place to what we find in another one in order to come up with whatever new process idea or technology solutions we need to identify. And also a part of healthy competition between the two is also good,
Of course. Yeah, it gives you also certainly a benchmark and also a sense as to how maybe others, leading companies are doing it.
Sure.
And I think you mentioned something around starting with the consumer in mind and looking at that and working backwards. It's probably also like a good practice that maybe some companies look at their existing infrastructure, their current setup to define what's the right approach, and that might be something that might be relevant for the audience. So we've been seeing an amazing growth of e-commerce across the globe. In Latin America, no different. I mean, depending on which stat we look, but we're talking about like more than 20% over the region year on year. So a lot of growth, a lot of opportunities. What are the major trends that you see in Latin America and again, as we said, maybe Latin America needs to be looked at specific markets, but let's look maybe the big markets of the region.
Yeah.
And what are the trends that you see are really the most important ones, and how do they differ, or how similar are they to other regions, North America, Europe, or Asia? So
I think in general terms, Latin America is not different from other regions in terms of mega trends and what is happening. We are probably in a less developed stage compared to what's happening in Asia or Europe or the US, but things that are happening here are the same that are happening or that happened already in those other regions. In general terms, if you think as e-commerce development, so e-commerce as percentage of retail is close to 4 or 5% in Latin America. That same number is 20% in Asia, 15% in the US. And we think there's no reason for Latin America to get to international standards on that regard. It's a matter of time and development of our own processes and tools in order to enable that growth to happen. So beyond that, in terms of trends, I think there are several things happening. You know that, and you hopefully can share with me some of the trends you see in DHL in the rest of the world, but definitely the more and more sophisticated use of data in order to improve value proposition for both sellers and buyers is one of the key things. So the use of artificial intelligence is really, really changing the way we operate. So we use it from, on the one extreme, building the most robust search algorithm or recommendation algorithm for our buyers in order to personalize their search experience and interaction with the platform. We use, I don't know, a 4,000 variable neural network model in order to score sellers on our platform and offer them, lending products. And over the last few months, for instance, we have used that same model with some tweaks in order to be able to better predict what those sellers want in terms of logistics services and tailoring our value proposition to them based on the different services that we have, depending on what our models tell us those buyers actually need. I don't know, we use artificial intelligence in order to build delivery promise algorithms. So I was saying before, we work with a lot of national carriers in the different countries, and it consistently happens to us that those carriers over or underperform their own SLAs. So they tell us a package will get from point A to point B in 3 days. Sometimes it takes 1 day, sometimes it takes 5. So we use AI algorithms in order to be able to offer our buyers the most accurate delivery promise. That's another big thing. But in general terms, as I was saying before, the use of data is definitely changing our operations. I think moving forward, and just to list some of the other trends that we are seeing, consumer packaged goods and subscription is also a big one, is a category that is growing super fast. I think that now that we have a seamless shopping experience combined with a more robust logistic network, more and more e-commerce players are getting into CPG, and that's a big one. I think mobile is key. It's probably not a new trend. It's just old news today. It's 70% of the searches you see in Mercado Libre happen through mobile phones. More than 50% of the GMV, so the US dollars in merchandise we sell, are coming from mobile phones. So that's just a few of them.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in getting to learn from you guys. What do you see elsewhere? What are you seeing in the other markets?
Yeah, so I think so. Obviously, I think when we look at what you mentioned, I would say that we agree on all these dimensions. I think some of them are relatively new, or some of them are just exploding. If you look at mobile, for example, purchase. I mean, we just reached some record that on Cyber Monday, for example, where we saw a huge spike in mobile and into purchase late during the day, which are done on mobile as part of this change of the consumer. I think what we see also is really the increase of that notion of buying anywhere, anytime, and being delivered. Really, this notion of frictionless logistics and giving the consumer the control and the ability to reroute, to hold, to deliver in alternative location, which from a consumer experience is great. From a logistical and operations standpoint is a real challenge. So many new, or not maybe so new, but many new expectations around just having an interconnected ecosystem where I can get it delivered to a pickup drop-off location, to a store, deliver, but not only for my purchase, but also for my return. So I think that's a big one. I do think that we see also an important aspect around personalization of not only of the purchase experience, but also of the delivery experience in regards to what people want to get. I think you mentioned something that we think is a major change also, is the increase of categories that are being sold online, which is a major component of complexity when it comes to operating the business. Because if you sell an industrial part online, or you sell a laptop, it's exactly the same for the purchase experience when it comes to the digital experience. But to operationalize that, it's a completely different model, way more complex, also way more expensive. So how do you deal with these changes also of categories that are being sold online? I think these are some of, and obviously there are others related to social commerce and so on. But I think when we talk about like the entire ecosystem, I think these are key points that we are saying. So based on this, what do you think is the role of a marketplace like Mercado Libre when it comes to consumer expectations and consumer behavior? Because at the end, you're also setting the standard of expectations, and you're also pushing the expectation to be every time higher. And that's a key point, right? In regards to what are we seeing is we see a consumer that wants things fast, cheap, eventually free. how do you stay ahead of the curve and also, push yourself consistently as to, we want to be the best, we want to be the fastest. So share with us a bit on this.
For us, it's all about preserving the startup mentality. So we are a big company today, but we like to preserve, and we really have the startup core values in our DNA. So we like to think long term. We like to put the customer in front of any decision we make, and we like taking risks. We go ahead, we take risks, we make mistakes, we adjust, and we try to learn fast. And on that regards, we try to anticipate on what we think the customer will want or will need. We have more and more digitally native clients who are demanding, who are curious, who have high expectations, and we know we cannot disappoint them, so we need to build the type of services and products that we think will meet those super demanding needs. This does not go only related to logistics and doing free shipping in Latin America. We're probably one of the first, if not the first, player in implementing a free shipping program in the region and shortening delivery times. But we have launched this year a sustainable products category in which we are offering a broad selection of sustainable products across our marketplaces in the region. We have launched a non-gender category within the apparel, so people can actually look for clothing, not navigating through a gender-specific vertical, and that's something new that had a tremendous reception in our users as well. And that's the way we are and we think. We try to stay ahead of what social demands will be. We try to listen to our customers, but we rarely ask them. I always like to bring this phrase to mind. Think of Steve Jobs in the early 2000s. If he was to ask consumers how they wanted to listen to personal music after the Walkman, nobody would come up with an iPod as a solution. So you cannot ask the customer what he will or she will want in the future. You just need to listen to the pain points and bring the solutions to them.
Yeah. So you really have to build it based on the insights you have and the data you have. So you talk about sustainable product, and we start to get some questions here, so I'll take a few of them. But just jumping on sustainable topic, because this is also a major trend that we are seeing now. Actually, really, sustainability is a topic that has been in place for a while, but we are now seeing this becoming a true problem that people are addressing within organizations and so on. So tell us a bit about that. How we're in this beautiful location with solar panel. There is definitely a clear already a culture of sustainability within the organization. Yeah. How do you transfer that into the business, into the operation, and keep competitive costs and so on?
I think it's an ongoing effort. It's hard to bring a recipe on what to do specifically on that one, but for us it's constant learning and putting our efforts and minds in thinking how we can make our operations sustainable, and not only for the short but for the long run. We have a fleet of electric vans doing last mile deliveries for Mercado Libre. Today we constantly evaluate whether we need bags, boxes, or different things in order to deliver our products. We measure the footprint of our operations, and we are constantly challenging ourselves in what we can do next in order to support our sustainability initiative.
Great. Yeah, I think we are also highly focused on this. We also believe that, we've been actually focused, and we also have, as you know, developed an electric van, which I think is a concrete example of how serious this is in regards to the importance of the topic. So let me take a question here. So we have a question from Fabiola that is asking, what would you advise to entrepreneurs that are scared to launch an e-commerce site on Mercado Libre or just become a seller?
I think there's no reason to be scared on launching an e-commerce to sell in Mercado Libre. I think nowadays we've made the product and the experience quite simple for anyone to be able to sell in Mercado Libre, starting from an individual physical person who wants to sell online and moving into the more sophisticated and bigger brands of the world who are today selling through Mercado Libre. Mm-hmm. In general terms, if the question is how to move from working in a company and shift into becoming an entrepreneur, that's a biggest and deeper question. You need to have the appetite for risk-taking, to making mistakes and learning fast, and that's the key on the equation, I believe.
Okay, very good. Yeah, yeah. I really think also that there is no better time now to launch. You know, if you wanted to launch your category of product, I mean,
it's really easier than ever,
yeah,
you know.
To get there, and it's not costly. So I think it's really the right time to do it, Fabiola, if you want to launch yours. We have another question here from Paolo, asking around the increase. So we talked about increase of categories of product, but he's asking, how do you manage the shipping for high-value products and premium categories of products? We are seeing now more and more also, not only big items, but also premium products, and can go from, you know, premium cell phones to jewelry or other categories of products. How do you...
So for us, it really doesn't change much from shipping different products. We do put a lot of technology specifically for those or that segment of products in order to make sure we can have full visibility and control and monitoring of what's happening across the value chain, either within our FCs or in the last mile piece of the equation. But it's not that we have designed a separate network for high value products. We think it's the same network with different components, specifically technology ones, in order to make it work. But it's not that we have separate tracks or that we have separate, you know, FCs to store high value items.
Okay, very good. So I'll take another one and then we'll keep going. We have a question from Rob here that is asking, how do you size the operation to define what's the right model? So you're going to go and put a new DC in Brazil into certain areas. What's the thought process around a center of gravity, income per capita, whatever the metrics is?
It's a great question. So we start, maybe I'm repeating myself and I kind of feel like I'm doing so, but we start from the buyer. So we say, what's our objectives in terms of delivery promises, delivery times that we want to provide our buyers in the different regions of Latin America. And we say, okay, think that we want to, and I'm just coming up with an example, we want to cover 90% of Brazil with next day deliveries in the whole country. And based on that, we build, you know, or we use robust or sophisticated software in order to identify what our nodes should be in order to make it next day to our buyers, and from there we solve backwards. We see, okay, how many FCs do we need, how many cross dockings, how many last mile stations, etc. What's the type of partners, and so on. Of course, the key thing when you try to design that network is what the assumptions you put into the model. You know, I mean, if you assume you will take 1 hour to process the orders in the FC, or if you assume it will take 6 hours, the outcome of the models will be radically different. But always we start with the service levels we want to provide, and from there we design the type of facilities and the location of the facilities we need.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I think it's a very clear message around starting with the consumer and what you want to deliver in regards to the experience. So we're in the middle of the holidays season. We just passed Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Share with us maybe a bit of the experience this year. How did you manage the peak? How did you prepare? And maybe some of the outcomes that you've seen as part of the process.
Sure. So we had a tremendous peak season across the region. We exceeded our expectations in every single country where we are operating. I think for us, the key to have a good peak season is planning, and more planning. So we need to plan ahead. We put a lot of effort from our team in order to plan, you know, volumes, operations, flows, etc., in order to be prepared for everything we could have thought of, but also plan and empower your teams for the unpredictable. So we had to prepare for anything that could come up in our different operations. I think that you managed to get that type of readiness through creating a team mentality, empowering, you know, people and bringing the best people on board. And then it was just amazing. I mean, if you could have been in an FC of Mercado Libre during peak season, the atmosphere there was just amazing. Thousands of people working super hard, in order to make things happen, but with a cheerful atmosphere and a strong feeling of belonging. I was there myself doing picking and packing in the Sunday of Buen Fin in Mexico, and I was just shocked. It was amazing, the energy and the commitment that people put into this process. And I believe that relates to this feeling of belonging. They all felt that they were democratizing, trade in Latin America, and they felt part of a bigger mission, and the engagement and energy that I could see in those operations was just astonishing. That's probably one of the things that makes me the proudest. Out of everything I do in Mercado Libre, getting there, being in the floor, in the operations, and feeling the energy coming from the people was just amazing.
Yeah, I got the chance to see some of the videos, and it was pretty amazing. It felt really like a huge movement, and also I think to put that vision to the people that are actually doing and executing that operation and doing the work on a daily basis, as to that package is not a package, it's a gift maybe for a kid, it's an experience.
And any package you miss is somebody who is not receiving what they bought, what the gift for their son, for their daughter. So that's the way we like to think. We like to think of the people behind the packages, the people behind the orders, and really feel the responsibility for making things happen.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. So there's quite an important debate, and we have often the question actually coming from Fortune 500 companies when we engage on the topic of e-commerce, and that they're looking at entering into the sales channel online, or even just extending it and pushing it further, around what's the best model if you should look at doing a very strong direct-to-consumer strategy or using marketplaces as part of your sales channel. I have my opinion that you really have to look across multiple ways to have the right balance, because customers are basically using different purchasing method also. What's your view? I mean, in Latin America, when we look at stats, sales online are 29% on marketplaces. If we compare that to Asia, it's a higher percentage. What do you think is key in regards to the strategy on how you define that?
I think my personal belief is that marketplaces and e-shops and retailers, they are complementary. They don't compete among each other, they complement each other. I think the digital world is redefining what's happening in the physical world, and simultaneously the physical world and their offering and experiences is also challenging and complementing what people can do in the digital world. When you look at what's happening between marketplaces and retailers, more and more I see a convergence of the two. Think of the Amazon in the US or in Brazil, Magazine Luiza, B2W in Argentina, Garbarino. Those were all initially 1P retailers who at some point, with different degrees of development today, migrated into a broader model of marketplaces. And when you see what marketplaces are doing, think of Alibaba in China, or even our own tests in Mercado Libre. Marketplaces are also becoming retailers in the sense of more and more, experiencing or trying into the 1P world. So in the end, I think there is a convergence of the two. And both digital native players and physical native players, we need to find our function or our role in that value chain. I think that physical stores are not just a matter of buying and selling things as they were before. They are providing experiences today. I think we are providing transparency, price comparisons, experiences for the buyers across multiple categories. So we also have a different role in the life of buyers as well. So in the end, we all need to find our own specific role in that value chain or in that ecosystem, but it's definitely a complement and convergence of the different models. What's your view on that one?
Yeah, so I think the topic of convergence is definitely key. I was just wondering if maybe we get a breaking news here. Will we see Mercado Libre purchasing a physical chain?
No, not a physical chain. I mean, that's not in our plans today, but I think we've said this publicly. We are, sorry, we are piloting, buying products and selling them in our store. It's a super small pilot for a super specific category in which we see a gap in supply, but no plans to buy any retail chain or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I'm also fully with you. I think the topic of convergence, I think we see, we call it agnostic experience, which is basically you see the consumers more and more buying simply where they search or where they see. And that can be in social media, it's going to be in video, it's going to be in gaming, it's going to be across multiple platforms. So basically you do that conversion wherever you're seeing what you like. So I think the importance of having a multi-channel and not spending so much effort and time and brain power on should I sell here or not, and invest, especially because you have technology partners today that can help you through integration, and you can have logistic partners that can help you through execution. So I think that's very important. So moving on into the topic of a topic also that is of very high interest, and we get also very often the question around automation.
Yeah.
So automation is a key topic today. It's not only a question of how do I manage my operation efficiently, but we see automation as being actually an absolute must when it comes to businesses of scale to just comply with the service level that are required. So we're seeing like huge growth in regards to robots being deployed. Last year we had 280,000. That number is expected to be around 4 million by 2025. So how do you see that, and what are you doing and working on at Mercado Libre?
Yeah, so we are fairly new in the world of fulfillment operations. So we started with this not so long ago, and honestly, most of our fulfillment have little automation today. We do have the biggest sorter of Latin America in place in our FC in Argentina, but in general terms, we are in the early stages of our automation processes. The way we think about it is quite similar to what you said. So automation is not just a matter of making operations cheaper or more efficient. It's a matter of scale and dealing with complexity. So we separate the problem in three. So on the one hand, there is mechanization, there is automation, and there is robotization, if you want. So we are definitely putting a lot of effort in evaluating the three levers and making the decisions we need to make for the long run in where to step in each of them. Every country in Latin America is different, so economics and reality and dynamics in each country is really differs. So we are evaluating this on a case-by-case basis and just trying to bring whatever we think is best for our users in each of the operations.
Yes, so I think for a company like Mercado Libre, indeed, it's even more complex in the sense of where do you apply it, and it will really differ by markets depending on labor costs and depending on actually even depending on technological partners that might not be present across the region. So it's definitely a key consideration when it comes to the region. I want to jump back into a topic you mentioned earlier on, which I think is extremely important for the region, but we are also seeing it across the globe. We're really seeing a huge push from marketplaces in going into the financial sector, fintech solutions. You spoke a bit about Mercado Pago. So I remember, I lived in Mexico a couple of years ago, and I remember the conversation at the time where, well, e-commerce is not really going to grow so much because we have so many people that don't even have access to banking.
Yeah.
And what I like to say to customers and partners and just people who work with is, don't worry about that. Someone is going to figure out and is going to solve it, and then
hopefully
it's going to be an
us.
opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about that, about the process, about where you are, where you see that, because I think it's today a significant part of the business for the organization, and
so
it's going to just grow by.
To your point, 50% of the population in Latin America is outside the traditional financial system, and we think the opportunity to democratize finance and payments in Latin America is probably as big or even bigger than the opportunity to democratize trade. So we started 20 years ago saying we want to democratize trade in Latin America. I think our mission is today to democratize both trade and payments. So when we built Mercado Pago in the early 2000s, as I was saying before, we wanted to enable our e-commerce platform to scale through payments processing. Then we realized the opportunity to process payments Beyond Mercado Libre's website was also big. So we started offering our payments processing capabilities to online merchants outside our platform. That scaled very well. But over the last few years, the whole fintech ecosystem started to become even more interesting for us. So we built our own digital wallet. So with our digital wallet, users in Latin America can store digital money, can invest in funds, and get an interest for money that is ready and available for them at the moment they want. They can top up their phones, they can pay for utilities, they can pay for public transportation, and more importantly, they can also pay offline in a network of merchants using QR codes, similar to what you can see happening in Asia, particularly in China. Beyond that, we have a Mercado Crédito, which is a lending platform through which we are offering loans to sellers, buyers in the platform and outside of Mercado Libre. So the whole fintech ecosystem is growing amazingly well for us, super fast, probably the fastest growing segment in our business. And we think the opportunity there is just huge to democratize finance and provide access to those people that you were mentioning right at the beginning of the question.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I mean, I've been using it. It's fantastic, and actually, it's not only for the people that don't have access to banking, right? I mean, all the solutions
I
really
use it every day. I don't take my wallet whenever I'm going for lunch. Every single day of the week, I just take my phone. I pay with my phone. It's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. So let's take maybe a bit of questions here. So Magali, Ariel, are we gonna see same-day delivery in Sao Paulo or big cities coming soon?
I mean, at some point we will. This last Black Friday, we started promising next-day deliveries across Sao Paulo and key cities in Brazil. It went just super well. But definitely, we will continue raising the bar. And at some point, we will be offering same-day deliveries in key cities. I mean, we are still designing products, services. We don't have a timeline. But it will definitely come at some point because we know we cannot just rely on what we have today. As to your previous question a few minutes ago, we need to always be ahead of what demands are coming from, and same-day deliveries at some point should come.
Yeah, very good. So it's coming, Magali. Another question we have here is, if you had to choose one key e-commerce logistic challenge, what would it be? It's from Juan.
I think, let me split this answer in two. I think dealing with the complexities of each country is definitely huge for us. So we think and we want to be the most reliable, fastest and cheapest solution across the continent, and dealing with the complexities of each country is huge. Also scaling our fulfillment solution has proven to be a bigger challenge than what we anticipated. I think that relates to creating the culture of consignment and making sellers get used to Mercado Libre providing them with the logistics solution. Consistently, what's happening is that once a seller tries our fulfillment by Mercado Libre solution, they just don't want to miss it because they love it. We take care of all their logistics problems. They just need to be focused on selling more and increasing their business. So I think those are two of the biggest things that we have been dealing with.
Great. So I think we're going to get close to the time, and I like to break the rules. So I know we had this set up for 45 minutes. My team is going to scream, but we're going to go a bit beyond this because I think we have just two more questions that I really want to ask Ariel about. So I apologize in advance. If you think about the future of Mercado Libre and where the company is going, can you give us a vision towards where in a couple of years we're going to see Mercado Libre?
Yeah, I believe it's same thing I've been saying. I think we want to democratize trade, democratize finance, and we want to leverage our unique ecosystem of the two things combined in order to provide a unique value proposition for our sellers, for our buyers, for our network of merchants. So I think we will continue investing behind the two, and you should see more categories, more solutions, stronger logistics network, but it's a matter of continuing executing what we are doing today.
Great. And if you have one advice that you would give to someone that is building their e-commerce strategy, pushing it to the next level, creating it, what would you say to them?
I think it's don't be afraid of making mistakes. I think the technology world, the digital world, it's all about making mistakes, learning fast, adjusting, improving, and testing again. If there's one thing that distinguishes the digital world from the traditional physical environment is this willingness and openness to make mistakes and to learn fast.
Yeah, I would say that you are giving that advice, but you're also living it, because we've learned through the time working with the team that it's really into the roots of the organization of learning fast and going really fast in regards to development initiatives. Thank you so much, Ariel.
Thank you.
It's great. I would like to say thank you very much for the audience. Also, we could not respond all the questions, but we're gonna respond by email to the people that have raised questions following the session. The session is going to be also available, and I will pass it on back to Laurie. Thank you very much, and Ariel, fantastic conversation.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you, Nabil and Ariel. Before we close, folks, just a bit of additional information. If you would all keep a lookout for a follow-up email to be distributed in the coming days, it will include a video recording of today's webinar, access to additional resources related to e-commerce, as well as information on how to set up a one-on-one discussion with a supply chain expert. So just keep an eye on your inbox for that. And before we sign off today, again, special thanks to Ariel and Nabil, as well as our organizer for today, DHL. And a thank you to each of you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.